You are listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I am your host, Celine Yeager. Each week, I bring you advice from athletes, scientists, researchers, and other experts to help you feel and perform your best, no matter what your hormones are doing. This show is a production of Live Feisty Media. Hello, strong, feisty women. So this week, I had the absolute pleasure of sitting down with endurance training legend Sally, or Sal as she now goes by, Edwards. For those of you who have been in running and cycling and triathlon or endurance sports for any amount of time, you'll likely recognize her name. Sal wrote some of the first books on heart rate zone training back in the 90s, and for 22 years, she served as the national spokeswoman for the Danskin women's triathlon series, where she volunteered to finish last, even though she was a professional triathlete at the time, so that no other woman who was afraid of finishing last would have to. And I met her during that time. It was at a women's triathlon event, probably in 1996. And triathlon was just taking off. And I really wanted to try it, but I was also very intimidated by it, especially the swimming. And Sal and everyone there made it sound so accessible and so fun that I just signed up and gave it a go. And I loved it. And meeting Sal at that event was a major turning point in my life because it would lead me to Ironman and Kona and mountain bike stage racing. And it was such a joy to be able to thank her for that and to talk to her about her early work, as well as her insights on where training technology is taking us in the future, because she is still very, very much involved in endurance training and the wearable market and is still an entrepreneur in that space. And now 76 years of age, she is still as active as ever. And she has some very strong ideas about what it means to stay active and what it means to have a quote unquote great life and how we quote unquote shouldn't let the old woman in. And of course, we also talk about menopause because hit play, not pause. And it's interesting. At the end of our conversation, when she was, talking about the keys to having a great life, she mentions that when she hit menopause, the folks at Kaiser Hospital were telling her that she had to take hormone therapy because that was the time. People were being told, women were being told, you have to take this if you want to protect your heart and all of these things. And she didn't want to. And she said no. And that about a year later, the original Women's Health Initiative results dropped. And, she seemed pleased that she did not, she had made the decisions that she had. And, while she was talking, she was in the middle of making a series of points about having a great life. And I did not want to interrupt her, to interject that hormone therapy is indeed back in the news, and the Women's Health Initiative results have been re-examined, and a new study just out the last couple of weeks show that it's safe. But experts are still fighting on the internet about whether or not every woman absolutely needs to be on it and the preventative health benefits of it, et cetera, and so on. And afterwards, I was like, oh, should I have said something? But I didn't, and I'm glad I didn't, because honestly, I didn't want to interrupt her. And I found it really interesting to hear her perspective from that time before the WHI results dropped, when doctors like hers were outright telling women that they absolutely should be taking it, because it's just nice to see this in historical context, right? It's nice to see that she made the decisions that she did at the time that she did, and that she is still strong and healthy and competing on the world stage at the World Sprint Triathlon Championships just last year. And of course, and I always want to say this is not me saying that hormone therapy is not a great option for plenty of women. It 100% is. It's also me saying that I really like seeing that women like Sal are evidence that there are other paths as well for women who can't or don't want to be on it, who are increasingly feeling stressed out about those decisions. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this one as much as I did. I'll put a link to her website, heartzones.com, in the show notes so you can check it out and check out her work in that area and some of the things on heart rate zone training that we talk about in the show, because we talk about how 220 minus your age really is a terrible equation, and there's better ways to find your training zones. Anyway, that will all be in the show notes. As usual, give us a follow at Instagram and Facebook at Feisty Menopause. Head on over to feistymenopause.com and sign up for my free weekly newsletter for 40 plus active women. A million thanks for your continued kind ratings and reviews. I really appreciate you all. And a very quick thanks to Previnex. I've been hearing a lot of you saying that you really, really are enjoying their new Muscle Health Plus product, which gives you creatine and all your other muscle making and protective ingredients right in one convenient powder. So thanks, Previnex, for your longtime support. Okay, enough of me. Let's have a few words about our awesome sponsors and get on with the show. Okay, Sal, I am honored and I'm excited to have you here because you are, and I'm sure you hear this all the time and maybe it gets tiring or maybe it doesn't, but you're legendary, right? You are legendary in the sport, and it's just I met you many, many, many years ago when I wasn't doing, I was riding my bike for fun and mountain bike racing here and there and thinking about doing triathlon, and I got so inspired by you and what you were doing in the sport that I thought I can do this too, and you encouraged me, but I'm sure you don't even remember me. I was just like, it was a million years ago at a little event. But that just set me on such a journey. I ended up going to Ironman in Kona, and then I got picked up by a semi-professional mountain bike racing. It changed my life. I mean, it literally changed my life. So thanks for changing my life. I guess
You're
that's how I'm
welcome.
starting this. You probably hear that a lot.
I do. I have I was fortunate in that got clarity on my life's mission really early, which is to get America fit.
Hmm.
And sometimes people ask me what's next, and then what's next is, well, we're not doing a great job on getting America fit yet. So let's work
Yeah.
on the world. Let's get the world fit.
Yeah. Oh, that's a
Yeah.
good that is an endless mission. That is true. But thank you. I mean, that I appreciate your service in that. And speaking of fit, I mean, you yourself have walked your talk for a very long time. And I heard you talking on another podcast that one of your goals in life is to be 365 fit. Meaning if I call you up and say, Sal, I need you for my Ram team, that you would be able to like maybe kit up and join me to race across America. Do you still follow that motto?
Absolutely.
That's
And
awesome.
I can't imagine, and it's a paradigm, living life any other way. Why wouldn't you choose? And it is and Celine, maybe you can answer. It is a lifetime question no one has answered, but you're a smart gal. So why is it when we know something is good for us, don't we do it? Why is it when we know something is good for us, don't we do it? And that comes from, all aspects of our life, keeping our minds sharp, keeping our bodies as healthy as possible. So 365 fit is 365 days a year. I am fit, and there's different levels of fitness. I'm not saying I'm in fit to do another Ironman. I've done 16 of them, but back in the day, that was a lot. Today, it seems like, yeah, more of a walk in the park. And where endurance athletics has gone, which I'd love to talk to you. We could talk for hours, of course. Really is these polarization between extremely fit, somewhat fit, and then the masses and I mean fit, and I talk about fitness not in three different ways. I talk about metabolic fitness, our ability to use in calories. I talk about physical. Obviously, everyone on this podcast knows about that. And equally as important as this emotional fitness is that when you get hit with something really difficult emotional, that you can self-regulate and I mean, go through all of the phases of happiness and sadness, but you don't go wacko.
Yeah, no,
That's
that's important. That's a great. Thank you for adding that because we have a little membership that is part of this, and we did a session last night on just that mental fitness, like being able to sort of like ride the sometimes really big turbulent waves of life and still remain, in your center, which, you know, which we're not like just floating heads on a disembodied body, right? Like those things are connected. Our biology goes both ways from our brain to our body and back and forth. So yeah,
Good.
and yeah, very good.
Uh,
Um,
but I want to turn the question around to you, Celine.
sure.
What is your method of being 365 fit?
I am very similar, honestly. Like I've never really understood. I am at my most peaceful when I'm in movement, and I am, feel most myself when I am doing things. If I wasn't also a writer, which is so strange because it makes me sit, in front of a computer for a very long time, I would never stop being perpetual motion. I mean, I just really like to be in motion. But what I have learned to do is like a good dog, just tire myself out. So then my brain is ready and my body is okay to sit in front of the computer. And that's pretty much how I balance how I live and the things that I am passionate about and that I think are my talents in life. But I'm the same way. Like I've always like if you asked me to ride 100 miles tomorrow, I just did on Sunday, but I'm always like just close enough to being able to do whatever event might catch my imagination.
Good. Good
Yeah.
job. I want everybody on this podcast. And the way I discovered 365 Fit is that I got one of those phone calls you really don't want to ever receive about a woman who was a triathlete who was entered in the Race Across America, RAM. And her name was Judy Flannery, and she had just been killed. Judy was riding her bike when a 14-year-old kid was driving the car because his father was drunk after a fishing
Oh,
trip, told the kid to get behind the wheel. And Judy had 5 children, and they said, she is the one of the team leaders of a 4-woman 50 and over RAM team. In 30 days, could you get in shape and ride your bike on a racing team to set the world record?
I mean, okay, there's 365 fit and then there's 365 record breaking fit. And I guess you stepped into that challenge.
I did, and we did break the
Oh my
record.
God, that's amazing.
I don't anybody who's done RAM. It's not something I would do again. And I've done a lot of hard races, so yeah. But
Wow.
you have to honor people that, like Judy Flannery, that it's
Yeah.
tragic.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm there's not much I can say to that, but yes, and I think it's amazing and you did a really good thing in life there. That's a karmically really good thing to do.
Yeah, it was hard, but we made it. So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
great.
But back to that question of why don't people when you know something's good for you, why don't you do it? It's just always I just can't figure it out.
We could have a whole different podcast on that because I think
Okay.
about that a lot too. But I think I will just add to this, maybe to your thought process that if you told me that crocheting or something that really has no interest to me and I would find difficult to do every day because I don't actually like it, would extend my life by 8 years and reduce my risk for diabetes and heart disease and all the other things, I still probably wouldn't do it.
Yes, you would.
Do you
Yes, you
think?
would. Quality of life is versus the quantity of life is so important. What we do every day, and that we don't waste our days that we have here, and particularly for the aging listeners here. I'm 76 years old. What do I have? 10 more years? 86. I might make it to 90 statistically. I might, but I mean, if you know you only have a few years left on the planet, don't you want to invest them in valuable results and outcomes
Yeah.
and not just waste them away?
I think everybody in this audience for sure does, and probably also ponders people who don't. But human complexity is maybe beyond the scope of what we can solve in this hour.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, so and that does actually, I mean, we'll circle back a little bit with some of what I want to talk about next because you are a pioneer in many things. But one of the things you're probably most notable for in the larger endurance training sport space, especially, is heart rate training, right? And zones. You really like pioneered that. And I'm just curious, when and how did you get the notion to do that? To train with heart rate and then come up with your zones?
So I co-founded a company that many of your listeners are familiar with called Fleet Feet. And in 1976, when I was 28 years old and I had $2,000, I figured out a way to start one of the very first athletic footwear. 1976 was like almost 50 years ago, right? Very first athletic footwear businesses, stores, retail in the United States, maybe in the world. And it was one of those when you say to somebody, oh, I got this really good idea. Celine's going to write a book on something or other, and then this negativity pours down, you're going to go broke. Let me hire a bankruptcy attorney, all that. And, you just forge through that. So we started Fleet Feet, and it was horrible, and nobody bought shoes from us. And there in 1980, the average price was $20 for a pair of Adidas,
Wow.
or Nike didn't exist. And I mean, it was 1976. I'm sorry, we started. And we started in about 1980 selling heart rate monitors. No one would buy them. And so I was running marathons at that point and racing and using my heart rate monitor. And um, Polar, which was then the premier heart rate monitor
Mm-hmm.
company, no longer that way. Apple is now the premier heart rate monitor company. Called and said, gee, you have a master's degree in exercise science. You have wrote this great triathlon book. How about writing a book on training with a heart rate monitor?
Wow.
And so I invented zone training, which is taking numbers, putting them in a range so we can make sense out of them. And I use the colors of the thermometer. When I say these things, I don't want to sound like a braggart. So I want to cushion that. I invented zone training, which is a method of taking data and making sense out of it.
Right.
Right. And I really wrote about that. The book sold well over 1 million copies. Polar knifed me in the back and refused to pay royalties.
Are you kidding me?
No. He said, hey, Sal, if you want to get paid, you can go to Finland, the home headquarters, and you can take it to court in Finland. And, and I've been in business a long time. I've started 6 different companies and sold most of them. One of them didn't make it, which is normal for entrepreneurs.
Mm.
And I always respond, well, you're not my friend anymore. So deals off. We won't talk. I'm not going to sell your products anymore. And the great part is that Fleet Feet has now, I sold it a long time ago, is up to 300 locations. It's the biggest chain in the United States. It's made it through all of the difficult things of online
It's
competition. And
impressive.
yeah, and it's tough to be a brick and mortar retailer these days. But about half of the heart reminders would come back after we sold them, and they'd say, I don't use it. I don't want it. I don't know what to do with it. So I qualified for the 1984 Olympic trials, which was 40 years ago. And there's a celebration of the first ever women's Olympic trials. It's going to be in Olympia, Washington. There are about 300 of us in the race, and they're going to have a reunion and go back to Olympia, Washington this month in May to celebrate, because the race was in May. And I put on my heart rate monitor, and I said, I'm going to run at 172 beats a minute, which I did. And it makes all the difference. I would win races because I'd have a heart rate monitor, and other people wouldn't. And afterwards they'd say, maybe I ought to get a heart rate monitor and train in zones. And I go, no, it's a weapon. Don't get one of those. You'll do better. Don't do that. I want to beat you. Yeah.
That's awesome. So that all of this you're talking about is decades ago. Are you are you surprised that people are still using 220 minus age as the benchmark for this? I mean, when I look at it, I'm just like, how haven't we advanced that in the general thought processes by now? What are your thoughts there?
Well, the history of that is there's a medical doctor named Bill Haskell, and he's at Stanford University, and he's on an airplane with some other person, and they said, we need to prescribe exercise. I'm the president of the American College of Sports Medicine. They get out, the napkin and they take an ink pen and they say most of our friends are 220 minus their age, and the 50% of them fit in, and we'll just make that. And it is like so many other things in exercise science, it is frozen as a fact of life, and it's a myth. And the myths like calories in equal calories out. As I get older, I get worse. All of these myths that keep being standardly thought. I've been writing and talking about don't ever use that formula. It's so poor. And then as you get older and older and older, it gets worse. And people can get hurt from it as well. So yeah, you've got to throw that formula and heart rate training and setting up zones completely out. We patented a method called the threshold training. And threshold training is using VT and VT1 and VT2, the ventilatory thresholds, and setting up zones, which I hope most of your listeners know. If not, go to the Heart Zones website and read an article about it.
I'll put a link to it in the show notes so people can, we don't need to belabor it here. We can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, go learn about that.
Yeah.
There's lots of things to learn about on your own, but one of them is stop spreading this myth. And journalists are some of the worst. Not blaming you, Celine, but they
Oh,
are.
no, 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 no. I know. And and then enter the internet and it goes exponentially wide and far. I mean, everybody just grabs it and that it becomes embedded gospel almost. So I I often look at it and think, wow, that is just entrenched.
And so old and so outdated.
Yeah, and so
Yeah,
outdated.
we'll
What do
keep
you
working.
think about the what's
So
that?
yeah, you have to go measure things. And
Yeah.
I think measuring things and collecting data and making decisions about any most parts of your life, financial, as we were speaking, emotional, we have emotional zones, we have metabolic zones. All of that is built into this methodology called heart zones. It really is important to put that the different pieces together and make sense of your life.
Yeah, agreed. And amen.
I mean, yeah.
What do you related, or not related, think about the current near fever pitch, maybe religion surrounding zone two training?
Um, it's I'm going to answer the question a little indirectly, so don't. If I didn't
Okay.
answer it, we come back. So it's a myth that there is a target zone. There is no target zone. Rather, there are multiple zones, and you get multiple benefits out of each of these zones. So you need to put a little time in each one of the zones that you and zone methodology. I created the original zone methodology, and it's been copied in our competitors change the words or the colors or the names or whatever. And they don't give credit where credit is due, but that is the nature in this fitness industry, is take other people's intellectual property and claim it to be yours. I'm not knocking them. I just don't think it's right or fair. So in zone two, which in our world goes blue, green, yellow, orange, red, is green, is really a great zone. I mean, there's no question. It's right at the top of the second ventilatory threshold or lactate threshold or whatever threshold system you want to use. And it's an endurance zone. You can go a long time. When I ran Western States, for example, 100-miler, and I won that race, and the records have all been broken, which is great. I did it in zone two, and it was you can run all day and all night and all day in zone two, or bike or swim or whatever. So I'm a big believer in zone two, but let me tell you about zone three and zone four and zone five. They're all good zones. That's the point. There's no one zone or one target. It's got to spend time and figure out how that works for your body.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think people just get, especially now, like everybody, because there is so information and so much noise, I think people just want this very easy little wrapped up candy piece of like, this is my nugget and this is it. And it just isn't, it's never that. It's never just one thing.
Correct. And I missed, as our health and fitness company evolved, I missed this whole coaching piece. I always thought people would like read these books. I've written 25 of them. Read these books, test it out, see if it worked for them. Maybe it doesn't, maybe it does. And then write a training program and then go do it and then measure it. I always thought there was this process, this method that people, I was so wrong. They did many, I would say 80%, maybe higher, want to be told what to do.
Yep.
They don't want to, they want to park their brains at wherever the entrance of their health club or on their handlebars of their bike, and they just want to go be a zombie instead of like, I'm going to pay attention to how I feel. No, I'm going to listen to my earbuds and zone out to music. No. It is so nice to be free from all the noise and just focus on a number, a scene, an image. And so, yeah, there in this world of zones, there's no one best zone.
And then going one step more into the landscape of today, like we have so many metrics available, Sal, now, like so many. I mean, I've got an Oura ring on my finger, and there's Whoop straps, and there's power meters, and so many more to come. They're talking about lactate, like continuous glucose monitors. We have all this stuff. Where does classic heart rate zone? Because I remember at bicycling when I was a fitness editor there for 27 years, and there was a period when the power meter first came in that people started taking off their heart rate monitors, right? Like this is the new thing. Watts are watts are watts. They don't lie. My heart rate lies. You heard that. And now people are sort of like, oh, no, maybe that's not true. The heart is an important thing, so they're bringing it back. But where do you think that it fits into this large landscape with all of this measurable technology?
I'm going to respond to that with two different ways. One is the hunt for the golden number.
Mm.
How can I put together the different physiological and from hydration and sweat rates to a lot of the other metrics that we have? And so, as smart as some of us are, I'm not sure that exists. I'm not sure we can wrap all this and say today your score is this and therefore you should do that. And where the wearables have gone historically, we're in phase 4 right now. There are 3 phases before, and I won't go through where those phases are and what I see as the next data point. But I'm just a really big believer that and you are too, I'll bet you anything. We're individuals. We all respond to exercise intensity differently. The revolution of the power meter was really important. We created a certification in that, but I will come back. I think heart rate is the number. Bring it on. Give me my cadence. Give me my speed. Give me my 500-meter rowing. I mean, give me all the data I can. But what is it that's the most valuable? And I'm pretty sure it's going to come to heart rate. So I think it'll circle. It is circling back, and it will circle back. And there's levels of understanding that, from heart rate variability to,
Mm-hmm.
all different. We have a school program. Our software is in almost 3,000 schools and physical education programs in America, which is a lot of schools. It's and I really believe one of the best uses for it is to, and I would wish every school in America would do this, is an assessment of your heart health. What
Mm.
are your recovery heart rates? What is the speed of your heart, acceleration of your heart rate data as I put on intensity? What is my average? It's a robust number, and it's the inner voice. I mean, we don't really have a lot of other inner voices.
That's a great way to put it. That is a very great way to put it. Um, when you look into your crystal ball, and maybe you don't want to share your crystal ball, but like where do you see where are the wearables going? And it sounds like you're alluding to that there is something coming down the line with heart rate, or maybe I'm hearing things that aren't there. But
Well, NBC just announced that in the Paris Olympic Games, which are coming this summer, they're going to broadcast heart rate. And they're going to broadcast heart rate on the television screen of both the participants, like parents, while they're competing, which would be really
That's
interesting.
very interesting.
It was there was a basketball player. Her name was Jennifer Azzi. She was on our Olympic team, and was a friend of mine. And I asked her if she would just wear a heart rate strap under. It was against the NBA rules or WNBA. I'm now divided to the MNBA for the men and the WNBA, so I can figure out which NBA we're talking about. And her average heart rate was in zone 3. And and I never expected that I would think it was like sprint, shoot, sprint. Yeah, so that's a zone 4, zone 5 kind
Yeah.
of. Um, and the other thing is there's no research showing that you should be training at what your racing heart rates are. So there's some belief I have to mimic my racing conditions. And in fact, that is not the case, at least with heart rate. Where it's all going is I think we're just going to get more, and as you alluded to, Celine, more and more sensors. We
Mm.
live in a world of sensors, and we live in a world of sensors because they're collecting this data that we can't collect. We just added a core body temperature to our software. And core body temperature is really important. It could have helped with diagnosing COVID because when you get COVID, your core body temperature goes. So there's a lot of health and medical as well as performance out of these. And I think, as you were saying, with continuous glucose, we're just going to see more and more data, more and more sensors. And I'm not too sure where we come out the other side. The phase 4 is really making sense of it all.
Well,
Because
yeah, that's it. Because you can put that all, but if you don't know what to do with it, you might as well not have it on.
right. And there's some wacko ideas out there too. So, and they're all expensive and they all start with the elite athletes.
Yep. Usually
And
triathletes.
typically, and that's because I was running ultra marathons before I started triathlons, and then I later went on to multi-day endurance racing. But the triathletes are a different breed of athlete, and I really appreciate that they tend to um, do things with more, let's call it smarts. They tend to, although most are overtrained, we've all been there, but they tend to care about their training in a different way than maybe some other. I'm just going to get in the swimming pool, swim 10,000 yards, and call it a day. I mean, they keep logs and they care and they try to look at trends as best as they can, or they hire an expensive coach to do all that for them, which is okay as long as the coach is educational and not authoritarian.
Right. I'm curious. I want to circle back a little bit. You said something that I thought was interesting, and I think the audience would want to hear more on, is that you were saying that you don't necessarily need to train to all your heart rate zones that you're for your competition, particularly. Can you talk a little bit more about what you meant by that?
Yeah, there's a really famous exercise researcher named Carl Foster.
Hmm.
Uh, is
Yeah.
just recently retired. He wrote some of the seminal textbooks. He and I wrote a book called Be a Better Runner, which is don't just be a runner, be a better runner. How can I improve? Because that's what most of us want. We want to get a little better, a little better, a little better. And how can I get that extra couple of percentage other than wearing a fast Nike shoe to attain that? And Carl's the one who did the research, and in the research, he had athletes training a lot at race pace, race distance, and he would compare all of that. And he said, there is no demonstrable data that I can see that you do better that way than you do what's called 80-20.
Mm.
And I assume your listeners understand 80-20 or 20-80, whichever way you
Hmm.
want to look at it. But you need a lot of low intensity training in this. It's called the black hole. I don't know if I could go into the black hole, but stay out of it is the message.
Yeah. Yes, I understand. That makes sense to me. That yeah, that does make sense to me. Um, as you know, this podcast, Hit Play Not Pause, is, the genesis of it was talking to women in and beyond the menopause transition because it can be a particularly difficult time, especially for women in sport. Menopause was nowhere in the conversation really until very, very recently, especially when you're talking about mainstream in athletic circles. And I know that this is in your rearview mirror at this point, but do you have recollection of that time in your own experience?
I wish I could share a horrible story, but I'd prefer to say that I breezed through menopause. Okay. The answer is you're lucky. No, the answer is I either had good genes, I paid attention, I responded to symptoms and experience. I think I had like 3 hot flashes and cried once for no reason. uh, Other than laughing as I'm crying, saying I'm going through menopause. But it is very, again, very individual, and every woman's different. And I was on the side of getting my period stopped and never came back. So I like that story a lot. I wish I could hear it more. I don't take any medication today or then, and so I'm, I don't think I'm lucky. I'd like to be normal.
No, that's an interesting way to put it. That is an interesting way to put it. Yeah, I mean, everyone's experience, and there does seem to be a strong hereditary component to it, but everyone's experience is different. I think tuning in is very important. Working with your physiology is very important, and we are here to help that become more of a normal experience for women.
Yeah,
So,
and I think the very first step to change is to notice.
yeah.
And to notice is what we need to do. When you do go through menopause, what are you noticing? What are your experiences? What happens to you? And I think it's really, really valuable to go to finish that process and be on to, hey, I don't have to go through this thing every month anymore. Yay.
Well, there's that. So I'd like to spend some time here as we're coming closing up the conversation to talk to when I contacted you about being on the show, you talked about wanting to talk about this idea of not letting the old woman in, which I haven't had anyone talk about that in on the show. And I invite you to explain that philosophy that you have to our audience.
Well, I listened to my friends, and one of my friends was saying, Sal, can you explain this to me? It was not a podcast or anything. My group of, from the running club or my circle of friends, we've been going down this road. I've been fit my entire life. I don't know any other way but to love working out. And there is a point, and I want you to tell me where the point is, where there is a deviation. Some of my friends stop exercising, stop living healthy, and just say, I'm not going to do those things. And others stay on the path, and you're one, Sal, and Celine is one. It's who we are, and it's what we love, and it's the best part of our day. And where is that point? What is it that causes this deviation from those who I would call it give up. They may say lifestyle change or something else. And those of you that just are committed to this. And I couldn't answer that question until I listened to the song. And it was a Clint Eastwood song, who's not my favorite guy. He turned 90, and one of his music friends said to him, what are you going to do for your 90th birthday? And I think we should all, what are we going to do when I turned 60, I decided to hike the Pacific Crest Trail. When
Oh,
I
nice.
70. So what these decades go by? What is it that when I turn 70, I want to race in the world championships, right? And see what 20 years of not racing in world championships looks like. And then and the song was Don't Let the Old Man In. And I listened to the words of the song and I said, this isn't about men. It's again, they frame this as is don't let the old woman in. And it's like you were talking about mental states. It's a mental state, which is when you start to age, functional capacities change. and you're including flexibility and endurance and speed, and I accept that as part of life. It's okay. It's like I'm going to have menopause and I'm not going to take any kinds of hormone replacements, right? Although Kaiser Hospital said you've got to take, and I said no. And about a year later, the results of those long-term studies came out. Now we don't do that. And so what I don't want people to do is let the old woman in. And the old woman is more than a mindset. It's like I'm getting worse. And so it's okay to get worse. It's not, it's our physiology is sure we're going to change, but it's better to accept the change and go, I'm just going to do the best I can. And I'm going to train the best I can. And I'm going to stay contemporary. And I'm not going to let from everywhere, from the clothes you wear to your politics to your money. I'm not going to let that interfere and make me an old person. So when people say, hey, Sal, you're 76, I say, yeah, I'm middle age. And they look at me and I've got gray hair now. And I said, yeah, I think I'm going to get old when I'm maybe 90. And I think that's a mindset of staying in the lane that is the best lane to live. I've just finished writing my first business book, which is off the subject, except that the last chapter is if you're going to go step by step through the different things in your life and you get to the epitome, you get to the best part of your life, what is the word that we put at the top of this mountain that we're climbing to have the best life we can? Is it compassion? Is it success? What is the word? And I finally settled. I've spent a couple of years thinking through what is it that we really want in life. And I came to the conclusion that the words are a great life. What do we want? We want a great life in every aspect of living. And if I have to share, I'm having a great life. I've got ups and downs and personal challenges. We all have that. But if you can say, don't let the old woman in and live a great life, you've got two messages that are really powerful.
That's a mic drop moment for me. I don't know if there's anything beyond that. I mean, I really, really appreciate you, you taking the time to share your story and share your wisdom with us. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to leave the audience with?
Oh, thank you. That's always a good finale question. Yes, I want to engage and motivate people to live a lifestyle that is not. I can remember, and the word is moderation. It is not a word of living in the middle of my life. I think taking challenges and risks are really important. I think learning new things is really important. Doing something you've never done before. One of the quotes that was on the I finished last in the Danskin triathlon for 21 years. And one of the posters that we made for the Danskin Women's Triathlon series, and there were 600,000 women who did this series over those years, and the biggest races at the time was, when was the last time you did something for the first time? And when was the last time you did something for the first time means let's always do new things. Let's always try, set some new goals and some new, I think I'll try, in your case, crocheting or knitting or whatever it was that's going to lower your blood pressure. Yeah, but maybe
Touche.
uh, stop somebody and talk to them about the election that's coming up and try to bring the two sides together in this divided country, the America we live in. Do something just completely off the wall. Learn how to make beer. I don't, whatever it
Yeah.
is. Do things for the first time, and that will help not let that old woman in.
Amen. Thank you so much. I got nothing to add to that. Appreciate
Okay.
you, Sal, and I wish you a great life.
Thank you. And I wish you to get to the top of your mountain and live every day that way. And that looks like a great life. Good job.
Well, that's our show. Come on back next week when I sit down with base jumper and all around badass Sean Brookman from Caroline Paul's book, Tough Broads. This one was a blast, so come on back next week. And until then, as always, stay feisty. You've been listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I'm your host, Celine Yeager. The show is edited and produced by the strong, talented, and amazing women at Live Feisty Media. Follow us on social media at Feisty Menopause, and please help us spread the word. Screenshot and share this episode on your social media channels with the tag @FeistyMenopause. Share the show with your friends, and please subscribe, like, review, and rate this show wherever you get your podcasts. Word of mouth and good reviews make it easier for other listeners to find. Thanks for listening, and as always, stay feisty.